Welcome, everyone, to A Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp
and Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP, Fargo, Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Tonight, on our April 1st show, titled Not Fooling Around, I'm going to break down why we have to take more serious measures to combat COVID-19 locally in the states that still haven't declared stay-at-home orders, and how we have to up our game in terms of protection. The CDC is now considering widespread use of masks for people who are going to be out in the public. So that is something that some people, especially first responders, especially folks that still have to go out and work, truck drivers, all sorts of people that are out there, city leaders, etc., they need to have these masks available to them. And we're going to also talk about scams and scammers, people that have been involved, opportunists that are COVIDiot activists in this pandemic. We've been following them for a very long time, having been protesters here against the Dakota Access Pipeline and other infrastructure projects that came after, as well as their involvement in the caravans and in human smuggling. In yesterday's show, I covered how AOC Sandy, as she's mostly well known by all of her friends, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was at Standing Rock and was closely involved with a lot of the folks that are now working on immigration and bringing people into this country, the open borders, Democratic Socialists of America, folks that we have been following with regard to the caravans. Now, they're trying to shut down detention centers in the United States. They're doing their activism from their vehicles, and they're putting people at risk. I'm going to delve deeper into New Sanctuary Coalition and the other fight with the pipeline here in South Dakota, the KXL Line 3 pipeline. So we're going to get into all of that tonight. This is going to be a very eye-opening show. The pandemic is laying bare for everyone to see all of the disaster vultures and opportunists that are willing to prey upon the American people at this very moment. But first, I want to thank everyone that has sent me information about the scammers in your town, what's happening in your communities, and of course, you can follow us on all our social media platforms. Send us your messages and comments on our emails, on our call-in line, and we would love it if you would make a tax-deductible donation to our work. Duke, how can folks get to us?
Well, they can get to us, and thank you, all of you who have been participating and helping us out and doing the crowdsourcing of the information. We're working right up to the minute when we go on, so we just picked some stuff up right before we started this broadcast. You can find us in many different ways. One way is do our call-in line, leave a message up to 3 minutes. It's 701-566-0917. Again, that number is 701-566-0917. You can tweet us at media_PPP. You can email Cindy at kpppfm.com or me, Duke, at kpppfm.com. You can follow us on Facebook. You're watching this live stream on 88.1 FM Fargo Moorhead. You can also go to YouTube. We broadcast these shows after we do them on Facebook, and we do premieres on YouTube at Duke 1517. You can also find us on Facebook at the People's Press Project and Mexi-Can. And Cindy mentioned that we have a webpage. It's kpppfm.com. That's where we store all of our videos, our stories, our programming. Plus, you can make a donation to our nonprofit organization, our nonprofit, non-commercial radio station at kpppfm.com/donate. We appreciate your support, and we're going to get through this together.
Yes, we will. And we're going to expose people that are taking advantage of folks during this pandemic. I want to start with our worldwide numbers. The total confirmed cases of COVID around the world right now, per the Johns Hopkins map, is 719,669, with a total of 42,075 deaths worldwide. Now let's take a look at our U.S. numbers. Currently in the U.S., we have topped 200,000. We are now currently at 214,639 cases. How much did we jump since I took the screenshot, Duke?
A lot.
A lot?
Yes.
Wow. Well, we are also now up to 5,099 deaths. Isn't it incredible how much that jumped in the time?
Almost 300. Almost 300.
In the hour
Yeah.
that we were putting together the show, since I took the screenshot. It's an amazing amount of people that are contracting this virus and that are dying from the virus. Tell us about what's going on in Minnesota.
Well, let's see. Minnesota, it's cases are going up. They're just going up. Things have been going up every day. Basically, the total positive is 689.
Wow.
And 17 deaths. And patients who no longer need to be isolated is 342. So that's significant. And also,
how about North Dakota?
North Dakota is also, going up really, really fast. So I'll bring it up here. Things are janky here, but this came actually from 102.9 WGO, my sister's radio station in Minot, North Dakota.
Cool.
Because they're doing coronavirus radio stuff all day long.
Shout out to Jeannie.
Shout out to Jeannie.
And WGO.
Yes. And unfortunately, she's reporting on what's happening in North Dakota.
Of course.
North Dakota reported 16 new cases, and it brings the statewide total to 142. And there's been 3 deaths. Now, out of those new cases today, 3 of them were in our Cass County, which is a county right here in Fargo. It was a woman in her 40s from Cass County. It's under investigation how she made contact. A woman in her 30s from Cass County, from close contact, and then a male between the ages of 10 and 19, and that one's still under investigation. And there's been 1 infant or a child between 0 and the age of 10 who's contracted the virus.
We also have a first responder in the city of Minot that has now tested positive for COVID-19. The city of Minot police officer is in self-isolation. And I believe there are going to be a lot more cases of our first responders and our medical staff all across the country that are going to be contracting this virus because they're the ones that are in close, prolonged contact with people that have the virus.
Yes, in North Dakota also, Governor Burgum today made a declaration that he's going to extend, or he's going to take the unemployment waiting week and get rid of it. Normally when you file unemployment, you have to wait a week without wages before you qualify for your first week of payment. That actually comes in 2 weeks, but the first week doesn't count, so you lose a week of wages when you apply for unemployment. He eliminated that, so your unemployment clock starts ticking right when you file, right when you get laid off. Also, he made an announcement that the businesses in the state will remain closed for an additional 2 weeks.
Well, that still isn't enough for some of the people, especially here in the Fargo area. A letter that was sent into the Fargo Forum trying to, I guess, reach the governor of North Dakota, stated in part in their letter to Burgum that they don't understand why the North Dakota governor has not taken the advice to heart and urged citizens to stay home with a stay-at-home order unless they are needed for essential jobs or have an emergency or urgent need. In Fargo, we continue to see people out and about acting as if these were normal times. In the governor's latest news conference, he urged North Dakotans to stay home if they were sick, to quote from the official website. Apparently, the governor does not understand that the virus is spread after people have been exposed to it, but are not showing any symptoms. This is the reason the experts are telling us all to stay home, even when we are not sick. This is a very good point.
Yes.
And information has just come to light in a story by the New York Post that patients could still be contagious after their symptoms resolve.
Really?
Coronavirus patients could still be infectious for up to 8 days after they've appeared to recover, a new study finds. This small study that was published in the American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine determined that half the patients were still carriers of the virus even after their symptoms resolved.
Oh.
Researchers looked at 16 patients, with mild cases who were admitted to the treatment center of PLA General Hospital in Beijing between January 28 and February 9. The most significant finding from our study is that half of the patients kept shedding the virus even after resolution of their symptoms, co-author Dr. Sharma from the Yale School of Medicine said in a statement. On average, the patients still had the virus 2.5 days after no longer experiencing symptoms, but individual cases ranged up to 8 days, the study showed. If you had mild respiratory symptoms from COVID-19, you were and were staying at home so as not to infect people, you should extend your quarantine for another 2 weeks after recovery to ensure you don't infect other people, said co-author Dr. Xi of the Chinese PLA General Hospital in a statement. The researchers, however, noted that more studies were necessary since the report was limited in scope. It is unclear whether the same results would be found in an older group or among those with compromised immune systems.
We just don't know enough about this virus. And we're learning every day that we have to learn that we're going to have to be isolated. We're going to have to not have contact with other people besides the people we're quarantined with. It's a really hard thing to think about, and people don't want to do it. But we just don't know enough. This whole news piece that comes out that you're still contagious after you're cured of it. I mean, people are going back to work or they're going out because they have recovered. And it affects people in so many different ways, and we just don't know what it's going to cause. And like I've said in every program, we've got to get used to it. We might not like it. People might think we're overreacting. We're doing too many things. But I'd rather err on, with caution than I would just get this virus, because I do not want to get this virus, and I'll do everything I can possible to not get this virus, and we should all be thinking that way.
But you know what? There are opportunists out there taking advantage of folks that are afraid, that are maybe showing some symptoms and want to get tested. You need to check with your local government because any location where they're telling you can go and get drive-through testing, or that you can go and get testing in some mass testing done in some facility or in a parking lot somewhere, you need to check, call and make sure that your city government has approved the testing and that this is being done in tandem with your local, state, and city governments, because it could be a scam. These are popping up all over the country where people are being charged exorbitant amounts of money for tests that aren't even approved. Plus, the people that are involved in taking the tests are not people wearing PPE, personal protection equipment, and so they are likely bringing people out en masse to take a test and spreading the virus even more. Take a look at this scam discovered in Louisville, Kentucky.
Metro Council President David James joining me for just a few minutes down here at the location of Sojourn Church where COVID-19 testing was announced. David, you and I have spent the last 15 minutes telling disappointed arrivees that this is not a legitimate test and that the testing has been canceled for the day.
That's correct. So the testing that was announced here was not announced by Metro government. This was a bogus scam organization simply trying to get individuals money, $240, and their Social Security numbers so they could file bogus Medicaid claims. So do not fall for it. It is not real. It is fake. Do not do it. Not only is it fake, it's also dangerous. The individuals that are doing it are not practicing proper PPE protection for the people that they're doing the test with. They're using the same gloves that they're sticking in your face. All those types of things. Everything that you shouldn't be doing, they are doing. Do not pay them $240 for a test.
And this poor gentleman who just arrived, looked like he'd had some dental work done, could barely talk.
Absolutely.
And he said his wife had given them $240.
Yes,
because she didn't have
$240
Medicaid
that
or
they could not afford. So I'm just trying to tell everybody in the city to not give them that money.
It's heartbreaking because this is a time when opportunists are coming in and taking advantage of the most vulnerable emotions that we could possibly
Absolutely.
have, because this is such a desirable service.
It is. You know, testing from the beginning in our country has been a problem, and they recognized that they could take advantage of this particular moment, but this is not a real test. They're not really testing for COVID-19. They're just simply scam artists taking your money and also doing Medicaid fraud.
David, it's very much like the DNA scammers that we've driven out of the city 2 summers in a row.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I'm on a mission today to drive them out of our city today.
Well, if you guys hear, and we've had at least 5 people in the last few minutes since we've gotten here, if you guys hear of anybody or see anybody who is claiming to do COVID-19 testing, it has to be something that is approved by the city. How are we going to know, and where are we likely going to see legitimate drive-through testing sites, David?
I would say that that's at least a week or 2 away. We're still waiting on the resources to be able to do that. So this testing that you saw that was advertised was not anything that was recommended by or approved by the CDC. It is total scam.
And Theta King Atkins just asked, where did this happen? Unfortunately, Sojourn Church believed that they were legitimate and allowed them to use their parking lot, which is heartbreaking.
That's correct.
And they posted it on their Facebook page and promoted it. And then today, after people caught on to it and we started making phone calls and got somebody like David and Barbara Sexton Smith and the other folks who are really concerned, the mayor's office, involved, they put up a post that said, sorry, testing has been canceled.
Testing's canceled. We've been caught. We've been busted.
Yeah.
So if you see them around, if they change locations, please let us know, and we will show up.
That's going to be an important thing. If you guys see these guys showing up, it's not legit because there are no tests that are available. These are marketing companies that work with so-called labs, and even sometimes the labs are legitimate, and the marketing companies are the ones that are faking out. And that's a good question, Leanne. We are calling Sojourn Church out on this because they should have made it okay with Metro before they took the steps of doing it and advertising it.
So the only tests that are taking place right now in any drive-up format currently in our city is with the University of Louisville, and they're doing that by appointment only under certain specific conditions.
You pretty much have to be sick or have very, very severe symptoms.
That's correct. That's
so,
correct.
David, you're wearing your gloves, which is good because you've been touching stuff.
That's correct.
You also are holding a mask. Why don't you show me what that mask is and tell me what you're contemplating doing with it?
So it's a mask. It's a mask that I plan on starting to wear when I'm out in public to protect myself and from other people, but also to protect them from me. And so it's something that the CDC is contemplating making a recommendation on right now. Maybe they'll come out today, but I'm trying to get a little bit ahead of the curve.
Talk to us about your experience, David, with...
So some of the people, like this gentleman that works in local government.
In Louisville, Kentucky.
Who, of course, you know, he's out there trying to stop scammers, so he's got to be out in the streets. And I was told by the person that sent this in to me, by the way, thank you very much for sending that to me, Mary. They need protection. They need personal protection equipment. And so folks like that are probably going to start wearing masks. If you're going to be one of those people that has to go out, then you may need to be wearing a mask. The CDC will probably be making that announcement very soon. But what we also need to remember is that we have to stay home. We have to use the social distancing on the very few times that we leave the house. We have to try to avoid being out because the healthcare workers that are risking their lives are begging us to. Hear from this nurse and why she is truly scared that nobody is taking this seriously and we're not fooling around anymore.
This is truly scary and nobody is taking it seriously. I want to jump through my phone and strangle people.
A terrified nurse just got home from a chilling coronavirus shift and quickly warned Americans about what she
I'm
saw.
an emergency room nurse and have been working on the front lines of this coronavirus for the last 10 plus days. If you would have asked me 10 plus days ago if I thought that this was going to get as bad as it was, I would have told you no. I mean, you heard the rumors, you saw the trends, but until you see it firsthand, you just have no idea what it's like, what it's going to be like. It's getting to the point now that we're going to be just like Italy. From 10 p.m. last night until this morning, we intubated 2 of my patients within a half hour. And I would say upwards of 10 patients were put on ventilators. My patient took the last ventilator available in the hospital. We have no medications to keep these patients even ventilated, let alone ventilators. Medications like fentanyl or propofol that would keep a patient sedated while they're intubated, we're out of. We're out of Tylenol. We're out of Tylenol. And that's not even going back to the fact that we don't have any ventilators to put these patients on. So we're going to start making life or death decisions in regards to people's care. So you're going to come in and you're going to get tagged whether you deem necessary to even get intubated, or are you being sent home to die? This is truly scary and nobody is taking it seriously. I want to jump through my phone and strangle people that are on the beach or out with their friends still. Like you guys, that's the problem, right? And I am being super transparent. I was one of those people that wasn't taking it seriously. But I'm here to tell you that you need to. We are literally making life and death decisions for people. And if I'm being super honest, I didn't choose nursing or the healthcare field to not help people. And that's exactly what the choices are that they're giving us. They're giving us no choice but to help only the people that they think that can survive. Normally, if a patient was to pass away, it would be because we tried everything that we could. We did everything we could. We had all the resources and all the people that we needed to help save this patient's life, and it was just their time. And now we aren't giving the patient the time to choose whether it's their time or not. We're choosing for them. And I never wanted to go into a career where I wasn't able to save everyone. And that's the option that society and the government and everyone is giving us, because that's it. That's all we have. And I'm telling you right now, please heed my advice and stay home. If you have any extra resources, consider donating them. And to my coworkers and all the people in the healthcare field, environmental services, our police officers, and hi Molly, yeah, to our police officers and first responders, just thank you so much for all that you're doing. We're in this together. We're gonna fight this as hard as we can. And if everyone does their part, I think that we'll come out victorious. But consider donating supplies if you have them at home, and stay home.
It's very, very serious. Yeah. And we really need to heed the warning of our healthcare providers and stay home. By the way, in Mexico, cities and states are taking it upon themselves, since the president hasn't done a very good job of telling people to stay home, to stay home. Take a look at this video from Tijuana, where they have police patrol vehicles with loudspeakers making announcements, telling people, which you can clearly see are still ambling around on the street, to go home and protect themselves from the coronavirus. Take a listen. There's a cop car right there. He's got his flashing lights on. He's driving down the street. It's prohibited for people to walk on the beaches. The beaches are closed. The parks are all closed. Don't go to these public spaces. They are restricted. That is what this vehicle is telling people, because people are still going down to the beach. That's exactly where we were with Oscar El Blue Ramirez of the Border Network News platform. You may recall Playas is one of those locations where we saw a lot of activity of migrants crossing into the United States illegally. Well, I want to take folks back now to the protesters that have been involved in all of this activism that we have been covering here on 88.1 FM. And I told you that 3 states here in the United States have asked for and passed legislation against pipeline and other infrastructure protesters, and they can hold them accountable. They can hold them liable, criminally accountable, and financially liable for the damages that they do to their states. Unfortunately, we didn't have a law like this when they did $30 million some dollars of damage to the state of North Dakota. And in yesterday's press conference, Governor Noem was asked about the pipeline protest with regard to how this will affect during a pandemic, and this is what she had to say.
And which state was that governor of?
South Dakota.
South Dakota.
Yes.
Here we go.
Governor of South Dakota.
Governor, right before you walked in, TransCanada announced plans to
Get a question in the room, and then we'll go to one on the phone.
TransCanada announced plans to continue to build. Can you give us any update, any communications with them, and how you see that? Is there a COVID tie into that, and how will you manage the influx of people coming into South Dakota?
Well, I had some conversations with the energy company that will be building the pipeline through the state of South Dakota yesterday. And they indicated to me that there would not be activity in South Dakota until maybe later on this summer. And so we will continue to communicate with them. They recognize the virus's impact in South Dakota and across the country, and will be working with us to make sure we're making good decisions on not spreading the virus and waiting until it is safe for them to continue the build.
So, of course, Honor the Earth and its executive director, Winona LaDuke, who was very involved in the shenanigans at Standing Rock, posted about the fact that they continue to fight the KXL pipeline, Line 3, which is called. And this is what she said in her post. While we are trying to survive, Enbridge and others are moving ahead to repress us more. Shame to state legislatures who protect corporations like these over the public health. Just to be clear, Enbridge wants to bring 4,300 workers to the north, half of them from here, but the rest, who the heck knows? No Line 3. And then she posts an ecowatch.com link that is titled 3 States Pass Anti-Pipeline Protest Bills in 2 weeks, which she is very upset about, of course, because that's their gig. That's how they make their money. And of course, I want you to remember that one of the latest scandals was a lawsuit against Winona LaDuke personally and her organization, Honor the Earth, for harboring a sexual predator who passes himself off as a shaman, a spiritual leader, which he has no credentials for, and allowing this man, under the guise of his spiritual leadership, to sexually harass employees, and also continuing to employ him even after a number of credible complaints of sexual assault on children. On children. These are the people that call themselves the protectors of the sacred. These are the people that call themselves the protectors of the migrants. These are the people that want you to empty the detention facilities and let the people get out of jail, okay? And they are also propagandaists, because almost everybody at Standing Rock, in my humble opinion, now looking back on things, were actors. And boy, were there lots of them, to include your Congresswoman from New York, Sandy, otherwise known as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And here is their latest film. They just premiered it last month. No, January.
Yeah, January.
They just premiered their latest propaganda film about their pipeline fighting efforts. And it's called LN3 for Line 3. Here is a trailer for their film. Nine Muses honors the Patagonia in 11th Hour production.
Yeah,
My father had been at Wounded Knee. Over 300 people had been killed. I understood what it meant to be an indigenous person in the 20th century, that history was not my fault.
We are not leaving! We are not leaving!
It was in fact a systemic problem that had to do with greed. It had to do with building an empire. We're the ones that have the obligation and the spiritual opportunity to change.
Eric Swanson on behalf of Enbridge Energy to discuss this critical safety and integrity-driven project. Society benefits when responsible operators bring forward projects like this.
Enbridge lies!
We are fighting for Mother Earth. We are doing it unarmed, peacefully. That scares them.
We must stand and summon all our courage. We must not allow them to invest in any more fossil fuel infrastructure.
Sometimes we have to make decisions we don't aspirationally agree with.
You have just declared war on the Ojibwe!
This is about clean water for future generations.
This is the battle for the earth. LN3, 7 teachings of the Anishinaabe in resistance.
We're looking at a situation where it may get very militarized.
Executive producer Winona
I was
LaDuke.
born and raised in northern Minnesota.
Maggie
I've never seen anything
Washburger.
like that.
Visit Honor the Earth to host a screening. How about no?
Yeah, how about no?
How about no? I don't spread your propaganda. Because these folks were involved in criminal activity. I know now that the people that framed the woman that I reported on for over a year and a half, Kathleen Bennett, a completely innocent Oglala Lakota elder whose mother was snatched away from her and put into an early grave, who was framed and spent 6 months in jail, who was left there to rot by a lot of the people that were working directly with the film production of this movie. The directors of the people that were with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and made another film I'm going to show you that was recently released. Remember that I told you that the people that are organizing protests right now during the pandemic against the president, the people that are taking and endangering everyone by possibly spreading the virus in their car protests in Minnesota outside of Governor Walz's house, and in cities all across the country, are doing so with a group called Refuse Fascism. Here is the post that I shared with you yesterday, where they're organizing an anti-Trump protest rally in Times Square despite the coronavirus social distancing guidelines. If you will recall, the Refuse Fascism organizer was quoted in there talking about how they believe that it's more dangerous what the president is doing, so they're going to go ahead and protest during a pandemic anyway, and ignore the social distancing and the stay-at-home orders that are in place right now in these states. And to remind you who the Refuse Fascism folks are, here are some of the signatories. Here are some of the people that started the group Refuse Fascism, to include Chase Iron Eyes, one of the Native American leaders that was at Standing Rock, and of course Bill Ayers, an activist and educator that was with the
Weather Underground.
Yeah, the Weather Underground, but they're considered a local terrorist group, or
yes, they are
a domestic terrorist group. These are the folks that started work still with Refuse Fascism in a variety of breathtakingly dangerous and stupid mercenary activism that I have been reporting on. Honor the Earth is working in tandem with Refuse Fascism, a bunch of groups in the Border Support Network, and of course Hollywood. Don't forget them, because they're part of this. In fact, recently on Honor the Earth's page, they held a webinar talking about how they can continue to organize during the pandemic, and included Mark Ruffalo, who you can see pictured at the bottom right corner of this Zoom conference that they held with Native people. And I want to show you who produced the Line 3 documentary. It's a group called 9 Muses. And 9 Muses webpage looks on Facebook looks a little bit like this. Notice that they have a ring on that looks like one of those Roman helmets or something like that.
It was covering the nose and then the ears, you know.
And they're wearing the rings in the photograph, and it's also the avatar for the page. And if you look at their latest video is the trailer I just shared with you from the Line 7 Teachings of the Anishinaabe Resistance.
Exactly.
They're the ones, these are the people that produced it. So let's go back in history, because they hadn't been producing a lot of stuff since Standing Rock. Let me show you what else they've been involved with. Of course, they were involved with Mama Ladana, one of the first organizers at Sacred Stone Camp that brought everyone to Sacred Stone Camp under the guise that this was her land. So let me show you a picture that they had of Mama Ladana that came from 2017 at one of the many protests that they did for keeping the oil in the ground. They're anti any fossil fuels. And this was at a climate change march that they did. They also work with entertainers and the group Red Rum, which is, you can see on the jacket of this entertainer musician, Nako Bear. He's wearing the Red Rum jacket. These were the folks that also brought you the Indigenous Peoples March in Washington, D.C., where Nathan Phillips, also of Standing Rock fame, perpetrated the hoax against the Catholic school kids that were wearing, some of whom were wearing MAGA hats.
Yep.
If you recall that scam, these were the folks that helped bring it to you. Of course, Muse has photographs of the resistance with Winona LaDuke, and it made me realize, given the date and the other photos in this album, that this production crew was filming stuff that was later to be used for this new documentary about the KXL pipeline, and they're protesting against that all the way back when Standing Rock was happening in 2016. And of course, they have the merch to go along with the rings. They have the jackets that have the same, helmet on them, and it says something like Freedom Fighters or something dumb like that.
Yep, Freedom Fighters.
And of course, they involved the vets. Here's a post where they thank the Standing Rock veterans, specifically the ones that, oh, by the way, AOC stayed in their camp, the ones that, oh, by the way, were working at TYT, the same place that helped to fund all the veterans coming out to Standing Rock to the tune of over $2 million.
Yeah.
And of course, they promoted the Red Warrior Camp that housed both Winona LaDuke and Tara Hauska, the lawyer from the Water Protective Legal Collective and the liaison to the Bernie Sanders campaign, all of whom were very much involved in Standing Rock protesting. But that's not all. Of course, there are more actors involved, like Shailene Woodley, who was prominent at Standing Rock during the protests there. And also, of course, once again, Mark Ruffalo. In this picture, he is next to Jesse Jackson of the Push Coalition. Is that what it's called? Rainbow Push Coalition?
Yep, exactly.
Remember the Rainbow Push Coalition? The same Rainbow Push Coalition that supposedly gave Jussie Smollett community service or some such nonsense after he perpetrated his hoax, his, what would you call that? Pretending to be beaten by MAGA hat wearing
It was propaganda.
White men. These folks make up lies, sell them, and then they make movies about them, pretty much. And here's the production company that they used, that this Muse group is part of. It's called the nonprofit AMA-G, the Journalism of Art and Education as Action. They are hashtag 9Muse, hashtag the future is female, and hashtag female perspective because according to the now defunct organization's website, it appears that they were supposed to do all of this from the perspective of women. But both Muse and 9Muse and this production and this nonprofit that were attached seem to have been created for the sole purpose of putting out a movie at Standing Rock and nothing more, because we really can't find anything else that they've been working on or doing besides that. And here is a post from 9Muse that shows you another thing, another protest, one where a woman holding a sign saying, not Muslims or immigrants, they're not our enemy. You can see that part of their propaganda is to protest against Donald Trump. That is something that carries throughout the rhetoric since Standing Rock and going forward. And also let me remind you that on December 22nd of 2016, when AOC was at Standing Rock, she did one interview and one interview only with a so-called Marine. I say so-called because a lot of these people embellished their service to this country or had none at all. And a woman that claims to be connected to the United Nations named Susana Sandoval. Here's a screenshot from that one and only interview that she did while she was there promoting Susana Sandoval, who called herself, what is it, a beekeeper or something, honey keeper? Harmony keeper.
Harmony keeper, that's it, yes.
She gave herself some weird title that connected her some way to being indigenous. She's a Mexican from Chicago. That's what she is. She's a Mexican lady from Chicago. Anyway, I wanted to remind you of that because Susana also appeared with a AOC in a little movie called The Sacred and the Snake.
The Sacred and the Snake.
Which was directed by none other than Jonathan Klett. This is his profile. It says there, I need to add him as my friend because I removed him at one point. And let me tell you who this man is. Okay? I don't think I've told this story, and I don't know especially if I've told it to this audience. I know that most of you who didn't follow me 3 or 4 years ago when I was reporting on Standing Rock may not know the story of what happened to Kathleen Bennett. But there was a woman who I later learned was working for the people in politics and power connected to Bernie Sanders, the people that brought the vets out to Standing Rock and Wesley Clark Jr. himself. One of them was Maggie Day, and the other one was, what was her name? Seven McDonald, the daughter of the singer of Country Joe and the Fish. Okay? This woman, Maggie Day, contacted me around the time that I broke the story about how Kathleen Bennett was framed and that I had found evidence, proof positive that she was framed and that there was no way that she had done what she was accused of. And what she was accused of was pretty horrible. She was accused of leaving her mother in the middle of a blizzard in a tent, naked from the waist down, covered in her own excrement and urine, and zip-tied to a chair. None of it was true. In fact, at the time that she was accused of that, she was actually at the casino with her mom, and there was video that was taken of her placing her at the casino with her mother by 3 veterans that came to Standing Rock because of the call for veterans to come to Standing Rock. So right around the time that I had proof positive that this woman had been framed, I get a call from Maggie Day. Maggie Day had inserted herself into bringing me insider information about the people from Hollywood that had gone to Standing Rock as one of their PR handlers. because she wanted to help me, she claimed, to get to the bottom of what was really going on with the Kathleen Bennett story, who had framed her, and how we could expose them. Turned out she was working with all of them from day one and was really just trying to scoop me, find out what I knew when I knew it so she could warn her friends.
Yep.
And one of her friends that she told me was a young reporter who was trying to make a name for himself and was filming out at Standing Rock with a group of the highest caliber leadership and insiders in the security teams. And they had told her, she called me to say, that the story about the abuse of Mary Trujillo by Kathleen Bennett was true. Jonathan Klett, the director of this movie, in which Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and this woman, Susana Sandoval, appear, among many other people I was investigating at the time for directly framing Kathleen Bennett and killing her mother at an early time in her life, before her time. She tells me, Cindy, I'm very concerned. I had Jonathan Klett ask a bunch of people at the camp about Kathleen Bennett, and they told him it's true. It's true. And I said, what's true? And she said, it's true that Kathleen was tying her mother to a chair. And I said, is it true that Kathleen was tying her mother to a chair on December 6th from this time to this time when Bill Runningfisher claims that he went into a tent and found this woman naked, covered in excrement and urine and zip-tied to a chair? Because if it's not, I don't even want to hear about it. No, Cindy, it's true. She said, it's true. You have to believe me. You have to believe me. You have to believe Jonathan. He's a good kid. He's a reporter. He's worked with some important publications. I think that he's published some of his work with The Guardian, etc., etc. And she makes me infuriated. Infuriated because I realized in that moment that she was trying to move heaven and earth to make me believe that Kathleen Bennett, even if I had proof positive that she had been framed, she wanted me to believe somehow that there were people amongst the group of leadership that was at this camp where he was filming for, I didn't know what at the time, but apparently it was for this stupid propaganda film featuring AOC and the woman Sandoval, the honeykeeper or whatever she calls herself.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to frame Kathleen Bennett, and they wanted to stop the reporting of this station to free her. That's how determined they were to see her stuck and rotting in a jail for 15 years. The heartlessness, the cruelty of what they did to this woman is beyond criminal and disgusting. And now I know that they perpetrated all of this along with Jonathan Klett, Maggie Day, Wes Clark Jr., and AOC. They were all involved, and they were all there right at the time that this woman was being taken out of the camp, framed, and having her mother ripped from her family. And I also want to share with you that later on down the line, as I was going down the discovery list of witnesses against Kathleen Bennett, delivered to me by her son, in order that I could investigate, I started finding evidence that so-called EMTs, paramedics, people that were part of the security teams that had written out false confessions, statements that were used to jail Kathleen Bennett, and I was exposing those people. Once again, I was contacted by Maggie Day, and she begged me not to air my shows about these 3 paramedic connected women because they were in Jonathan Klett's movie. They were prominently going to be featured in Jonathan Klett's movie, including Vanessa Bolin Clemens and a couple of other women who also played roles in putting Mary in a hospital and taking Mary away from her family. And so the ask from Maggie Day was that Jonathan was finishing the footage, getting everything together, editing, working on his movie. And he was going to reach out to these three women and find out why had they participated in falsely imprisoning a woman and taking her mother away, especially when they claimed to be healthcare workers, first responders. And what were they going to do to rectify what they had done? Finally, 3 days later, she contacted me to tell me that she sat and listened to the phone calls that Jonathan Klett made to these three women and heard as they admitted to him that they had participated in putting this innocent woman in jail. And yet, he was still going to go forward with putting them and prominently featuring them in his propaganda film, lifting them up, propping them up as heroes, as water protectors, and as protectors of the sacred. So disgusting. It's so disgusting to me to realize that behind all of this, they were protecting politicians and the careers and the beginning of the careers of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So it's no wonder that she continues to go to bat for these criminal enterprises that they were working with all the way back then. Let's go to the next slide here, and let me show you how in this posting of the same photographs, you see that Jonathan Klett was the one that was taking these pictures, and he tagged Chase Iron Eyes, Natiani Means, another performer that was at Standing Rock and went on a tour of his own, a musical tour, a rap tour after Standing Rock. And also, let me go to this next one that shows you who these folks, Jonathan Klett, were working with when they closed the camp at Standing Rock. There's Holly Elk Lafferty. She was working directly with Mulaney Stoneman. Mulaney Stoneman was the person who took custody of Kathleen's mother away from her and helped to put her in an early grave. And of course, one of the other people on those DHS watch lists, Doug McLean. Remember, Doug McLean was taken into secondary questioning on more than one occasion as he was crossing between San Diego and Tijuana. And in between, he took a little detour to go to that Indigenous Peoples March where Nathan Phillips perpetrated his hoax against the Covington Catholic school kids.
Oh, yeah.
A hate crime hoax. And I wanted to show you what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said about her appearance in this film. She said, "I first started considering running for Congress at Standing Rock. It was really from the crucible of activism where I saw people putting their lives on the line for people they never met and never known. When I saw that, I knew I had to do something. I want to vomit in my mouth." It is so disgusting to me to know that this man was the same man that was helping to frame Kathleen Bennett and having his little PR buddy, Maggie Day, contact me and beg me and lie to me about broadcasting and exposing my stories, my evidence, my proof that they were all liars, was working to promote the career of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and they are still working with the criminal enterprise in the Border Support Network. Here are some of Sandoval's posts. Susana Sandoval, who appears in that photograph in that movie, The Snake and the whatever. They're both snakes. All of them are snakes. Here's Susana's post about the knowing your rights on the COVID, how you should know your rights and how you can still protest, how you can still help empty the detention facilities during the pandemic. Here's another of her posts talking about the COVID emergency criminal legal system and a webinar that they held to educate people on Zoom. Here's another post where they're writing a letter to El Paso, If the Border Network news people from El Paso and Mr. Aguero are listening to me at this moment, I would love for them to look into this nonsense, because this group of the Border Support Network is making demands of the El Paso government that people not be asked about their legal status or be asked for any sort of identification or anything like that when trying to get medical care for COVID-19. Remember, this is the same group of people that has continued to organize camps of migrants at the border during a pandemic. I just showed you that yesterday. They're putting the people at risk, and then they're the ones that come in to save the day. Here's another one of her posts on the same Border Support Network page talking about the 3 migrant children in U.S. government custody that tested positive for COVID. And she says, who's ready to organize? This was just a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't that long ago. They're active right now, the people working with AOC. And if you recall, she was talking in her video where she went to harass an ICE agent that was moving children to New York, that she got an anonymous tip from the new Sanctuary Coalition. She got an anonymous tip from someone at this rando organization she knows nothing about. At least that's how the video comes off.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it sound like she don't have nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And I also showed you yesterday that the executive director of said organization is a felon that has been in prison for taking for committing wire fraud, banking fraud on innocent people, and identity theft. This isn't just any old crime. This is a guy that did hard time for real horrible things. And of course, this is the same folks that are helping to organize these Free Them All protests that you're seeing all around the country. There's Close the Camps, Free Them All action that is co-sponsored by the new Sanctuary Coalition.
You know, it's startling information, because they're taking something that was good for our society, community organizing, and organizing to change society and change things that people are being put down for, is to make better equality in life for people in our communities. And they're propaganda artists, they're criminals, and they're seizing an opportunity when we're all supposed to be inside and taking care of ourselves and not have the spread of this virus. They're out there organizing for their own benefit and putting all these people in danger. And it just really, really bothers me. And it's really important to get this information out, especially since this is all current. This isn't stuff way in the past. We've been doing this work for a long time, dealing with these people for years, and they have emerged, and they're a danger and a menace to our society. And you're listening to KPPP LP 88.1, Fargo-Moorhead, adding local color to your airways.
Leave the camera on yourself while I tell you this little story, dude,
All right.
because I want folks to see one of the people being investigated for criminal activity, whose picture is right behind you.
Oh, yes.
And that is none other than Nicole Elizabeth Ramos, who you can see is on part of this watch list of 50-some activists, journalists, organizers, to include the pastor, the head pastor from the new Sanctuary Coalition, who I showed you she's very chummy with yesterday on my show. And along with a lot of these other people are the people from Border Angels, are the people from the Minority Humanitarian Foundation, and a whole bunch of other people from the Border Support Network and organizations that are part of that. Remember, AOC is one of them, and all of those Democratic Socialists of America are part of it as well. Don't forget that. In addition to the crimes that she was accused of, which was fake marriages to defraud the government of the United States on these asylum claims, this woman that you can see behind Duke, Nicole Elizabeth Ramos, admitted in an interview that she was, you have to put yourself on the screen, honey. Admitted.
There we go.
admitted that she was. Admitted that she has set off an Amber Alert in Mexico after she removed an unaccompanied minor and brought them to the U.S. Remember that I also did a report accusing the people that she works with in the Border Support Network and her organization of crooked lawyers at Al Otro Lado of participating in the kidnapping of an unaccompanied minor from the Agape shelter in Tijuana. Remember that we also showed you the evidence that they were practicing law without a license in Tijuana. Remember that her co-counsel in this crooked lawyers organization had their sentry passes taken away and were held in questioning in Mexico and then deported. And last but not least, I want you to see that the executive director of New Sanctuary Coalition, which is a felon, is being interviewed by none other than millionaire or billionaire heiress of the 7-Eleven fortune, Mary Ann Thompson Frank. In her post about this video, she says, what you can do about the ICE standing up for the soul of our nation. Enjoyed an inspiring meeting today with Rabbi Joshua Stanton of East End Temple, one of the past spiritual leaders of the Menamsine Institute, that's her institute, or cult, whatever you want to call it, and Reverend Robert Hunt, working with me via the Perkins School of Theology, Southern Methodist University, Reverend Chloe Breyer, the executive director of the Interfaith Center of New York, where I am honored to serve on the board, the executive director of the Interfaith Center of New York, where she's on the board, Alan Klein, my spirit brother, and one who pulled us all together for these meetings, and Ravi Rogbir of the New Sanctuary Coalition with Rabbi Stanton, where Rabbi Stanton serves on the board. As of today's meeting, we hope to support future training for faith communities in New York and Texas. And what is this video about? Well, I don't want your ears to bleed, so I'm only going to play a little section of it. But basically, it's Robbie telling people how to do a buddy system, how to interrupt ICE from gathering up illegal people and removing them from our country. And this is something that they intend to do even during the pandemic. Let me tell you, I'm forecasting what they're going to do. Take a listen.
Because we believe no one should be deported, it is so much easier for us to help someone. We don't care what country you're from. We don't care what language you speak, what's your religion, what's your sexuality, what's your history. Meaning that even if you did commit a crime and you've served your time and your family, you want to be with your family, you should be given that opportunity to be with your family. Second chances is faith-based, and that's why it is so important that we base this in the faith community.
Why aren't you playing it?
Absolutely. And it's important to also emphasize that's not hyperbole to say that this is like the slave acts in the past, because right now there's situations in the state of Texas where they're building facilities at 45 to 75 million each, and we know people don't spend money unless they think that they're going to make money out of it. And in Texas, it's legal for people who have been put into prisons to be forced to work for free, and corporations.
So she basically is equating the detention facilities to the slave, the owning of slaves.
Yeah.
Okay. Which they believe gives them the excuse or the right to free them all and to fight against detention facilities holding people at all. They've always been about that. I also want to remind folks of what Rogby just said, which is that even if you are a criminal, even if you have committed a crime, you should be allowed to stay in the United States with your family because it's second chances. And that would include him, of course, because he and Paula and Linda Sarsour and all of the people from New Sanctuary Coalition that are fighting to keep him in the country know that he's a felon. They know he's a criminal. Just like Mary Ann Thompson Frank surrounds herself with a lot of these criminals, felons, child molesters, etc., as I have shown you repeatedly over and over again, and they don't care. They don't mind. Let me show you who else they were working with, and that was Myron Dewey, the Awake film that we saw on Netflix, and of course, Juan B. Mancias, the chief of the Carrizo Come Crudo tribe that started the camps for the Border Support Network with Evan K. Duke III, another convicted felon. Another person on the watch list. One of the people being investigated by the FBI for being in contact with Ivan Riebling. Ivan Riebling, as you will recall, was accused of selling weapons, or he was going to be selling weapons to the Border Support Network Antifa activists. Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember who was caught in pictures with Mr. Ivan Riebling and then denied it? Yes, that was Paloma for Trump. You recall that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Let me show you what else Marianne Thompson Frank is known for, because this woman is a kook and a half and a cult leader, as I told you. Here's a picture of one of her posts about the woman that, oh, by the way, Paloma for Trump helped to expedite asylum for into the United States. And she is sharing, Marianne Thompson Frank is sharing the false post with the picture of Maria Mesa and her 2 migrant children running through the tear gas that was posted by Jeremy White, who works for the Bernie Sanders campaign, saying that a migrant child was killed by a tear gas canister. Remember that post? Scroll up so you can see. This is the screen captured post that we kept where they say that one little girl has allegedly died. There was no deaths. There wasn't even any serious injuries that happened that day, but these propagandists make things up out of whole cloth, and then they make movies about it, and then they go on speaking tours. This is how these actors and con artists make their living. It is sad. It is disgusting to me, and it is a tribute to how all of these bad actors, because they really are D-list actors, they couldn't get another job, have all involved themselves as predators even during a pandemic. Thanks for being here. Please share this message. Please share my show, and keep it tuned to A Mexican Crossing Lines with your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You've been listening to 88.1 FM, KPPP-LP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. God bless you and good night.